Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the creepiest thing you've ever experienced that still gives you chills? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe. I don't know about creepy, but I got two good stories. One time, shortly after my grandma passed, our heater stopped working. My dad went into the crawl space at 2 a.m. in absolute freezing weather. They lit the pilot and came back up. About 10 minutes later, the heat went off. He did this a few more times, then we all bundled up for the night and waited till morning. First thing the next day, the guy shows up. He comes back up a while later and tells my dad there's no reason your pilot light should have kept going out. But if it hadn't, y'all would have gone to sleep and never woken up from the carbon monoxide. Second story. I was 17 and had just got my license, so I was allowed to drive by myself instead of a learner's permit. I was on a straight road coming up on a green light. I had my graduation tassel hanging from my rear view mirror. All of a sudden, the tassel started swinging violently as I zigzagged the car real hard, but I was still going straight. Then, lightly in my head, I swear I heard bells like quiet church bells, not loud. I slammed on my brakes for no reason right at the green light and watched as the car doing like 70 in a 45 flew through the red light. Then I took my foot off the brake, went through the green light, and pulled into a parking lot where I thought about it all. I didn't panic, I didn't know what any of it meant, and I have no idea why I hit the brakes, just because some strange little things were happening. Went to the top of Blue Ridge Mountains to see a supermoon. It was midnight or later, and it was very cold, like end of December up in the mountains cold. My sister, her husband, and I were there enjoying the moon when a very small broken door car pulled up next to us. The car looked like there was no way it could have made it up there. That's how broken down it was. A guy steps out alone. He's in shorts and a tank top and pulls out a trumpet. He blows it like 3 times at the moon. We all noped the f*** out of there, ran into the car and drove away. To this day, it sticks out in my memory and still gives me chills. The energy of it all was very off-putting. I was asleep and heard a gunshot, clear as day, that woke me up. My brother was having suicidal ideations at the time, and I thought he ended his life. Thankfully, my brother is okay. I still have no idea if that gunshot actually happened or if it's something my brain created. Weirdest, creepiest thing that's ever happened. About a week after our dog Bandit passed away, myself and my husband and our son, who was 7, were all sitting and watching a movie in our family room. Our house was a tri-level and the family room was on the bottom floor. At one point I looked over and I saw Bandit come down the stairs. I walk in front of the TV, turn around and go back up the stairs. Later that evening, when I was putting my son to bed, he told me that he thought he was Bandit earlier. I asked him when, and he said when we were watching the movie. He saw Bandit come into the living room and then go back upstairs. I told him I saw Bandit too. It was actually comforting, and it's always been our special thing. This one night, while having a few drinks at my friend's apartment, an old house converted into a couple of suites, we liked to keep the door open for other people to pop by. Everyone knew everyone. We all got along. We were at the point where we were all quite drunk. This girl came running into the apartment and hid behind the couch, screaming, "He's gonna kill me!" and other similar things. All the girls kind of hid her behind the couch, surrounded her like a wall of protection. She was bruised and cut up, and tiny, like 90 pounds. We called the cops. A few people went down to the foyer to see if anyone was chasing her, and this guy with a baseball bat was at the front step pacing back and forth. My buddy said it was like he was deciding if it was worth going up. They all stood blocking the door, refusing to let him in. When the cop showed up, he just went apeshit, swinging the bat at everyone. He was eventually tased, and a female cop came up and helped the girl downstairs. The girl wouldn't answer our questions, but repeated over and over, "I'm dead. He's gonna kill me." She started throwing up at the front steps and like convulsing. I genuinely think he was keeping her captive. I genuinely think he would have killed her had she not found a place to hide. And that was it. We don't know what happened afterwards. Never heard anything else since. I hope she's okay. I was on hour 15 of a drive from South Dakota to Reno in the middle of the Nevada desert on Route 80. I stopped at a rest station just off the highway, 50 miles from the nearest anything. I was just starting to get tired and road weary. The sun was just starting to go down and it created a crazy red and orange sky. The rest area included a gas station restaurant hybrid. There were 4 cars parked in front of the restaurant. There were 2 or 3 big rigs parked further out in a dirt area. I walked into the restaurant to use the bathroom and found it completely deserted. No one behind the counter, no one in the kitchen area, no one sitting at the tables. After I used the bathroom, I came out to find a cast member of Children of the Corn on his hands and knees scrubbing the floor. He asked me if I needed anything to eat. I said no thank you and got the hell out. Remember when I was a child, I woke up after what felt like a cat or dog sat on my chest. I was too scared to move until I felt it jump off. We didn't have a pet. I couldn't explain it, and there was no sign of anything having been in my room. Second one was more recently. Woke up in the morning to a text from my ex, who asked if I'd like to go for a walk and for some food. We met, had a lovely walk, and went into a pub where I ordered a cheese pie. Whilst I was eating the pie, she said something sweet. I smiled and then woke up again in my bed. I could still smell the cheese pie. It was incredibly difficult for me to accept that that was a dream. I still have a hard time. It was a weird glitch in the Matrix thing for me and still thinking about it a lot. Call me. Laying in bed, felt someone staring at me. Look at my closet. Door was open and there was a woman crouched and looking at me, not moving. Blinked and she was gone. The next day, my friend, we lived in a dorm, told me they had a nightmare and woke up to a woman leaning over them, looking down at their face. His description was the same as the woman I saw. My daughter playing in my room while I was folding laundry on the bed. We have a very deep, dark closet. She freezes and points into the closet and screams, "Spooky scary," and books it out of my room. I found her shaking like a leaf covering her face. A few days later, my husband was working late. My daughter was asleep in bed. I was in the shower with the bathroom door open. Clear as day, I heard the front door open and shut. I got excited, thinking my husband just came home. I called out for him, and again, clear as day, heard his voice say, "Yeah." I got out of the shower, wrapped myself in a towel, and popped around the corner to greet him. He wasn't home. Checked his location, he was still at work. I didn't sleep until he came home. Watching a homeless man in the Himalayas cut off his hand for a rich tourist for a year's worth of pay, basically. We met him on the way up at a way station down. On the way down, we met him again and he told us how he cut off his hand for some rich person's entertainment so he could feed this broken little girl in rags who lived with him. We figured it was his daughter, the way she clung to him. I was 12 and came back from a trip grown as about the nature of the world and humanity. In my family home 100 plus years old, I've come home as a teenager and heard a parent say hello from upstairs, and I've said hi back and started talking about my day, only to realize I was home alone. The same happened to my mother a couple of times. She was convinced I was in and got the shock of her life when I got home. Then a few years ago, it was the time of the family skeptic, my dad. Everything remotely paranormal is discounted by him, and he came home, heard a hello, and had a full-on conversation, one way I imagine, with someone upstairs. Before realizing he was home alone, it really creeped him out to the point where he didn't want to talk about it very soon after. Out here working a race on Long Island, where I live. This is the South Shore, so that's the Atlantic Ocean behind me. Just wanted to bring you guys down here. It's snowing and kind of a wintry mix, but the race is on. So anyhow, hope you're well. Personally, I've always loved and found something so mysteriously beautiful about winters at the beach. So I don't know. Anyway, I hope you guys are well. There it is. The beach. Have a great day, everybody. See you tomorrow. I'm a paramedic. A few years ago, we were working a patient in cardiac arrest in his bedroom on the floor between the foot of the bed and a dresser with a TV on the top that was turned on but muted. We worked the patient for 30 minutes or so, determined they were no longer viable, and pronounced them deceased. About 30 seconds after we stopped CPR, and as we were taking a moment of silence, the TV, which had been working fine the entire time we worked them, went pixelated, started buffering, had a brief second of intermittent sound come in, then went back to normal, all in the span of about 3 to 5 seconds. We stayed on scene for another 15 minutes or so, waiting for law enforcement in the corner, and continued to work fine for no issue. I'm not sure what I believe in regards to afterlife, but I know that patient's soul went somewhere in that moment. We all shared a look, but never talked about it again. I legit have goosebumps typing this out right now. LOL. Lived on a 100-acre property in Ontario. My mom and I took our horses for a ride late winter. It was a mild day for Canadians, understanding, but still winter. We entered the little patch of forest our trail led through, and we suddenly hear coyotes yipping up ahead. We paused, but they sounded far enough, and it wasn't that strange, since we knew we had a pack around. However, within minutes, we hear them again, only this time closer. That's when we suddenly heard them behind us too. They were trying to block us in. We immediately turned around and ran the horses back to the fields and called my dad and brother to meet us with the four-wheeler, all while whooping and hollering and making ourselves as loud as possible. Made it back out safely and all was well. But man, that shit and energy was unreal. Within seconds, we had become prey, and you could physically feel the tension in the air. It was instantly threatening. You could yourself tell there's no way they'd take on a horse and a rider. There's no way they'd take on two. But it was a harsh winter, and when animals get desperate, they start behaving out of the ordinary. I'm not convinced they wouldn't have tried to take us on, and that shift in energy was enough to make our flight instinct kick in and get the hell out of the forest and to higher ground where we'd have sight on what's coming for us. Longest 2 minutes ever standing on that hill facing in the opposite direction to cover any approach, waiting for the four-wheeler. I was shopping for cat litter at a local market when an extremely pale woman in black trench coat with black stringy hair walked up to me and fully leaned the front of her body on my left side. Her face was inches from mine. I thought she was collapsing at first, so I tried to catch her, but she froze in place. She wasn't even looking at me, just staring off into space. I got a really bad feeling in my gut, and after asking if she was okay, I backed away slowly. She just stood there completely frozen. I walked around for a bit and passed back by the aisle. She was still there, frozen in that spot. I went to tell someone I thought a woman was having a medical emergency, but she wasn't in the aisle when we got back. I think about this all the time. Fishing trip in a small stream with the wife and my 3 kids, the oldest being 5. Wife had walked upstream with the babies. On the other side of the water, I spotted my youngest floating face down. I don't even remember getting wet. I grabbed the back of her red jacket, my heart stopped, then heard the wife thank me for saving the jacket. It had been thrown in by my little John to see if it would float. I sat on the bank and cried, shaking and hugging my little ones. We left, and to this day, I have never fished that stream again. Still get a bad feeling just typing this. When I was 11 years old, my mom was depressed, like really, really bad. When finally she got treatment, she started to sleep all day long and be normal or depressed the next day. It was kind of good because at least I knew, and we knew more or less what to expect. Well, one of these sleep all day long days, I went out of my bedroom to go downstairs to the living room with the rest of my family. I walked past the door of my parents' bedroom and I saw my mom, fully dressed, combing her hair pretty aggressively in their bedroom. She didn't see me. I kept on walking toward the stairs, and I swear I heard my mom's voice inside my head saying she was going away. I rushed downstairs, blocked the door, and told everyone that my mother was going to try to go away. Nobody doubted me for a second, and I'm the little one in my family. They always doubt me. We hid every house key and went to sit in the living room watching TV. My mom went downstairs into the front door, tried to open it, searched for the keys, and started yelling at us to open the door. That she wanted to go away right that second. We told her no and remained calm. She came to the living room and sat in her rocking chair. She was rocking like a crazy person. Suddenly she stands up and runs for the stairs. My family breathes, thinking she's going to sleep, but I hear her voice in my head again, saying she was going to exit the house by throwing herself down the balcony, a third floor open to the garden. I went sick. I tried to run after her, but my legs collapsed, and so I shouted to my family, "Mom's going to jump from the balcony. Run, please." They run after her. My bro tackled her in the door of the balcony, and I don't remember anything else since I was terrified and confused. My mom is all good now, and has been for a very long time. She was sick for 2 to 3 years, worst years of my life. Nobody has asked me how I knew. I've never talked about it, but yep, I heard my sick mom's voice in my head basically saying she was going to abandon me or kill herself trying to do so. I'm in my 40s and still don't know how, but I saved my mom's life. My daughter was only a few days old. I was holding her in my arms. The hallway light turned on. I leaned forward on the couch, expecting to see my wife. She was not there. I walked into the hallway and realized my wife was in the shower. The door at the end of the hall was open. That wasn't unusual. I walked into that bedroom. I'm not really sure why. I stood there for a few seconds and I could feel the room almost immediately drop in temperature, and then the hallway light turned off again. I walked back out into the living room. When my wife came back out, I told her what had happened. She told me earlier in the day a lamp appeared to have been knocked off a table, it was unplugged and laying on the other side of the room. She initially thought it was the cat. You know how they like to do their zoomies and knock stuff over once in a while? But when she went downstairs a little after this happened to get some laundry, she realized the cat was locked in the basement. To this day, we don't know why these events happened, and nothing like this has happened since. I was working from home and on with a client and heard my dog, who was in the yard, barking to be let in. I texted my wife, who also works at home, to see if she was able to let the dog in. She didn't text back, but I heard the back door open and my dog coming in. During lunch, I thanked my wife for letting the dog in, and she said she didn't. And it was probably our upstairs tenant who sometimes lets our dog in when he lets his out. I texted him and he said he hadn't been home all day. So yeah, I don't know who let my dog in that day. I once remember about 10 plus years ago, I was working at a grocery store and I stayed unusually late at night to help the store close. There was a much older woman, maybe 50s, that was notorious for coming in literally last minute. So she felt she had the entire store to herself every Sunday night. And the coworkers knew her and didn't pay any mind that she did this, accepting that this was just a preference of hers. It was my first time ever meeting her, and I was the one to check her out. Sent her on her way. It was around 11 to 12 a.m. that I finally got in my car, started it, and was prepared to leave, but saw a car drawing up beside mine. This wasn't out of the ordinary that people would stop behind me, given there's a stop sign with an intersection right where I'd need to reverse out to, so I waited patiently. After a few minutes, the car was unmoving. I thought after a while that they were distracted on their phone, taking their sweet time and frustrated. I opened my window and looked out behind me as an obvious gesture of "what are you doing?" with just a look in the faint streetlight. The first thing I saw was a literal hoarder's mess that filled the vehicle, with all the windows in the back entirely blockaded with copious items. To my surprise, I recognized the hair first, then the face. It was the same woman, smiling at me. I didn't share a smile back, I just stared. She opens her window and starts conversing with me, saying things about how she'd love to spend time with me and that we could go to the beach together. Alarms were ringing out in my head at this point, because not only have I never seen this woman prior to that night, but I realized she was purposely blocking me from driving away from her unless I gave her an answer. So the immense pressure of saying yes was overwhelming, anything to get her to leave. I agreed and she smiled wider, nodded at me, and finally drove off. I reported it the very next day to my at the time supervisor. I was thankfully removed from working any more Sunday nights, and never saw her even a single time since that one-off interaction. There was something very off about her. I worked as a cook at a hospital on night shift. Before I left at 3 a.m., I would go to the trash area and dump the used deep fryer grease. Yes, we had a deep fryer. I would have to take an elevator inaccessible to patients, and when the security guard had found out I was going to be taking that elevator, he told me to have him buzzed before then, and he would go with me. He made it clear that he always wanted me to have him or another security person with me, and if I had to go alone, I was under no circumstances to get off the elevator at any floor if I stopped there, no matter what I heard. He told me this especially meant the second floor. Sometimes the elevator would stop at random floors, so this wasn't that weird, but when I was with him, he always was lightning quick, shutting the doors for the second floor. Well, one night, all of security was busy, and the grease drop was the last thing I had to do, and I really wanted to go home. I got in the elevator and it went down and stopped at the second floor. The door opened and I didn't shut it right away. I could hear what I would swear to this day was crying. At first it sounded like a baby, then an adult, then both. It was always cold in the hospital, but it suddenly was freezing and I was terrified. I shut the door and finished the grease drop. I never went down there without security again. I also found out the second floor was the morgue. There are perfectly rational explanations for all that. Security was necessary because the trash area was sometimes targeted for drug paraphernalia. The elevator would just stop or be called by people who left before it showed up. And it's possible that someone was identifying a body and had an infant with them. All the same, it was deeply frightening at the time, and it still scares me. At my childhood home, my sister and I had bedrooms downstairs in an unfinished basement. She was away somewhere, I can't remember where, and I was playing in my room alone. I heard a girl's laugh coming from where we set up our play area. The only other girl in the house was my mom, but the laugh definitely did not come from her. Also, I had one of those plastic dolls with the giant feet, and you could snap on different clothes. I can't remember what they're called. They had a button you could press, and they would say certain phrases. My doll started going off even when I didn't push the button. Was told that the button was probably stuck. So my mom took the batteries out. It still went off randomly, so I threw it out. I used to live in a haunted house, and that gave me a few really bad moments, but when I was in a C-note and looking into the deep, deep black of the cave, into the abyss, that was the creepy in a way my body really reacted to, but the worst was the time my now ex-boyfriend and I wanted to go see a waterfall at night. Full moon, and a waterfall should have been beautiful. We were about halfway up, and we both stopped dead in our tracks for no discernible reason. But I had gotten shivers and a strong gut feeling I should stop. He looked at me kind of weird, and we both laughed and kept walking for a few more feet, but then stopped again when the feeling came back, but worse. We turned and went back home. As it turned out, a poor woman had been riding her bike earlier in the day and was abducted off the trail, and was kept for several days and then killed, and her body was left in the same area. We happened to be in that same little spot that same night, and I can't help thinking it was the universe telling us to get out before we ended up with her. It has stuck with me for almost 20 years. A few years ago, while I still lived with my parents, my towel fell off the hook while I was in the shower. Without thinking, I blamed it on the Jack, the house ghost. Fake name because ghosts deserve privacy too. I basically called him a creep for trying to see me naked. Dumb, I know, but Jack never gave off bad energy. Then for the next 3 nights, I would sleep for an hour before being woken up by the feeling of being in danger, and that someone was looming over me or coming toward me. Sometimes I would open my eyes and see a dark silhouette, and a second later, I would actually wake up, even called out, "Who are you?" in my sleep. Finally, before bed on night 4, I apologized out loud and asked them to please stop. Jack never bothered me again. The creepiest thing that still fucks with me up happened when I was 19 and house sitting alone for 10 days. Family friends asked me to stay at their big house while they went to Europe. House is like 100+ years old. Wooden floors, long corridors. First week was fine. Then, one night around 3:30 a.m., I wake up because I hear very clear footsteps walking down the hallway toward my room. Actual heel and toe, deliberate human footsteps. I freeze. They stop right outside my door. Dead silence for maybe 20 seconds, then very softly 3 knocks. Not aggressive, just tap, tap, tap. Like someone politely asking permission. I didn't move or didn't breathe. After like a minute, the footsteps slowly walked away again. Same direction they came from. I laid there until sunrise, shitting bricks. Next morning, I check every door and window, all locked from the inside. No one could have gotten in. I tell myself it was probably the house settling, or pipes, or whatever. A few years back, I still remember this like it was yesterday. I was home for a long weekend. I was upstairs watching TV by myself. It was late, and everyone else had gone to bed. I remember I had dozed off myself. I don't know how long I was asleep for. Here's the creepy part. I remember I was just starting to wake up, just barely opening my eyes when I felt something squeezing my left bicep really tight. It took me a moment or two to fully wake up, as I was still kinda groggy. When I was fully awake, my heart was racing, and I felt a big rush of adrenaline. I looked around the room to see if anyone was there. I didn't see anyone. I was alone. What could have squeezed my left bicep like that? I don't know what it was or what could have done that. All I know is that whatever happened that night happened, and I'll never forget it. I used to live above a pub that was first opened in 1811. Loads of weird stuff went on, like hearing the bathroom light cord pull on when no one else was in the building, and the circular thermostat getting turned to the left back to 0 when I'd turn it on. 2 things stand out though. I was looking after a friend's dog one night. I lived on the 3rd floor, pub was open on the 1st floor, spare bedroom and my private bathroom on the 2nd, just to set the layout. The dog is usually really happy and energetic. He suddenly starts crying, staring into a far corner where I have my clothes. I try to console him, but he keeps crying for about a minute. I have a small table for eating by my clothes with a small rectangular photo calendar stood in an open triangle shape in the middle of it. Suddenly the calendar goes flying off the table onto the floor and the dog stops crying and carries on as normal. Another time I woke up from a dead sleep to a female child on her hands and knees staring at me from the floor. She was wearing a white dress and bonnet. She started crawling toward me in a really fast motion, like when you're watching a video on a computer and you drag the cursor to speed it up and the footage goes a bit jerky. For some reason I didn't feel scared, I just turned over. When I did, she was now sitting on a wide ledge by the bed, with her knees tucked up to her chest, still staring at me. I turned over again and went to sleep. I always felt weirdly protective of her and was sad to leave her when I moved out, as the pub has now closed down. When I was 17, I was homeless and addicted to heroin. I was living on the streets of San Francisco, California. One night I was asleep on the sidewalk outside the mall, on the backside of the mall where there's less people. I woke in the middle of the night to a large bum-looking person with their erect penis in their hand, and he was masturbating while uttering, "Such a pretty mouth, such a pretty mouth," standing directly above my face. I jumped up and started yelling to get the fuck away from me and started freaking the fuck out. It scared the absolute out of me. Another night I was asleep somewhere else and it was pouring down rain. I was awoken by a fully nude person, soaking wet, and they were begging me to get inside my sleeping bag to warm up. I jumped up again and started yelling to get the fuck away from me. I moved spots both times. San Francisco's wild. I don't recommend heroin and opiates in general to anyone, unless you're rich and don't give a fuck about anything. Love and respect, friend. I'm 36 now with about 12 years clean under my belt now for anyone who cares. Cheers. So when I was about 10 or 11, me and a friend of mine were staying at my house alone overnight. We had been playing computer games, Ultima Online, yes, and I recall all night, and suddenly there was a knock at the door. We lived way out in the boonies. The only thing around for 2 miles was farmland. Dude was early 20s, clean cut, but clothes were disheveled, asking if we, or someone there, could give him a ride to town, that he had ran out of gas. You could see for miles in any direction, and there were no flashers or brake lights visible. So I tell him, yeah, hang on a second, and shut the door. And then turn to Chris, the friend, and yell loud enough for him to hear me. Grab my shotgun off the wall. Kept the long guns hanging on a rack beside the fireplace, and he turned around and ran off the porch. The whole thing was just suspicious enough to scare the shit out of young me, especially considering there were no cars in the driveway to give him any reason to think that we could give him a ride anywhere. In my culture, after the burial of a family member, that family has to wait a year before they are allowed to release the passing member's soul to the final stage, reincarnation, their next and last phase in life. My grandma lived with us for a time back then, and she passed away in 2013. For that whole year of 2014, there would be a knock at the front door every 6:30 p.m. You could peek your head out the window and see no one. I was spooked at first, but my mom told me that it was only Grandma returning home from her gardening as usual. Yes, not past tense. Our culture believes that they are still with the family even after they pass away physically, and will continue to live with the family for another year until the reincarnation. So I got used to it. 6:30 p.m. hits, a knocking noise at the front door, and repeats for 365 days. It stopped after we released her soul.